Ми в ефірі. Ольга, ми вас не чуємо. М'ют.
І отже, ми готові розпочинати. Dear ladies and gentlemen, дорогі українці, we are continuing the series of conversation, or sometimes rather interviews with intellectuals in Ukraine with those around the world, keen to be closer to the root sources. The main focus of those events is growing awareness about what is happening right now. Our speakers from Ukraine will share the last updates and their personal experience. Therefore, we will analyze the freedom of expression landscape, future-looking perspective, and expected changes in societies, states, role and responsibility of writers all around the world. І ми продовжуємо серію розмов або радше інтерв'ю з інтелектуалами в Україні, з тими, хто по всьому світу прагне бути ближче до першоджерел. Основним фокусом цих заходів буде обізнаність про те, що відбувається зараз. Тому наші спікери з України поділяться останніми новинами та своїм особистим досвідом. Згодом ми проаналізуємо ситуацію, перспективу майбутнього і очікувані зміни в суспільствах, державах, а також роль і відповідальність письменників у всьому світі. This event is organized by PEN Ukraine with support of Ukrainian Gongadze Prize, Ukrainian Institute and Ukrainian Institute in London. PEN International is playing a role of the platform supporting freedom of expression, especially those crucial times. The event will be held in English. Організаторами цього заходу є PEN Україна за підтримки премії імені Григорія Гонгадзе, Український інститут та Український інститут у Лондоні. Міжнародний PEN слугує майданчиком вільного висловлювання, особливо важливого в ці дні. Захід відбувається англійською мовою, відтак тут перемикаюсь цілком на англійську. I will present our today's guests and pass them the stage. Our guest from Ukraine today is Oksana Forostyna, writer, editor, translator, and co-founder of a number of important cultural initiatives in Ukraine. She's also a book publisher and she writes essays and articles in Ukrainian and in English. Oksana's background is an investigative journalism with a focus on national politics. She also has been the local reporter for Voice of America back in 2000s. Hers is an experienced voice that will share updates on the current situation as well as impart her thoughts and perspective. She also critical contributors those days. Oksana joins us from Lviv, the cultural and intellectual capital of Ukraine. And also she is Martin Krull Fellow, what is important to understand today. And our guest on the US side is Marci Shore, an associate professor of intellectual history at Yale University. She specialized in the history of literary and political engagement with Marxism and phenomenology. Marci is the author of The Taste of Ashes, a study of the presence in the communist and Nazi past in today's Eastern Europe, a book that gives us some background for the current situation as well. She recently translated Michael Gawlinsky's Holocaust memoir, The Black Seasons. Marci joins us from New Haven, Connecticut. Marci, welcome you here on the stage, and would you like to ask probably what's going on in the current time?
Yes, well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. I had been looking forward to this lecture. It was also an honor for me to do something in memory of Georgi Gongadze, who I didn't know in person, but I remember very well getting the news of his murder in 2000. I remember watching the documentary about that at Columbia at ASN shortly after September 11th, and being full of admiration for the resilience and the spirit of his widow and everything that she has done since then. So it was already an honor for me to be asked. I'm completely kind of blown away by the fact that you would still like to have this conversation in extraordinary and unimaginable circumstances. I'm in New Haven. I can barely think myself, and I'm neither in Ukraine nor Ukrainian, but I can say that my husband and I have been kind of up day and night, talking to friends and checking the news and talking to journalists and talking to students. And that is nothing compared to what you are all going through now. I'm very happy to see Oksana, who I hadn't seen, I mean, even virtually, in quite a while. I obviously wish it were under happier circumstances, but Oksana, yes, please tell me, I mean, how, you're in Lviv, how are you doing? How are things where you are?
Oh, hello. I'm also very very pleasant to talk to you again. It's sad that the circumstances are so dramatic for this conversation. I'm in Lviv, and I'm very privileged in this situation, as I'm at my parents'. Basically, I'm at home, and with all my family, with my extended family, and we came on Sunday before all this nightmare began. So we came here very very comfortable. Actually, so I'm safe, and I'm at home. I don't have to deal with thousands of problems other people who came to Lviv have to deal these days. And of course, it's uncomparable to what my friends in Kiev are going through right now. And just full disclosure, Ukrainian philosopher Volodymyr Yermolenko should be at my place, but is now relocating his family. Actually, so that's what I'm here, and I'm honored to cover for him, and I just keep my fingers crossed that he's safe and his family is safe.
Yes, Volodya wrote us last night such a sweet apologetic email in these unimaginably inhuman circumstances, that he was so sorry he wouldn't be able to have this conversation. He was so looking forward to it, but he's trying to save his elderly parents and his children. And again, I was just so in kind of awe and admiration that he even had the lucidity to send such a lovely email in unimaginably inhuman circumstances.
So, and maybe first thoughts from Lviv during these days. I met my old friends yesterday, and today I just came from a small spot. We are packing some things for the army, for the territorial defense, and that was the same people. Basically, that specific spot, that was the same people I know from late 90s, and I know they were all activists of hunger strike on Maidan Nezalezhnosti and Maidan in 1990. It was the so-called student revolution, and then we came through together through political crisis after Georgi Gongadze was killed. Because again, they were very active in those days. This protest action, then two revolutions, and I meet these people again and again, and mostly under such challenging situation. But these days, actually, today and yesterday, I saw that the daughter of one of the student activists who took part in hunger strike in Kiev in actually more than 30 years ago, and his young daughter, she's a teenager. She's organizing all this, logistics and packing and all these things. And I just forgot. I just pray that was the last generation of Ukrainians who have to deal with something like that. So and Marci, I know that you must be very busy with all comments and requests and everything, but I suspect that you are also have a unique reflection of what was going on, because actually all your professional intellectual life was at large, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, at large was reflections of totalitarian experience and communist experience of Europe. And I have some intellectual kind of flashbacks these days, and I guess you too, and of course yours is much deeper.
Well, I wouldn't say mine is deeper, but you know, of course I am in a certain kind of subject position because I'm a historian of Eastern Europe. You know, so part of what I'm doing is thinking of it as a historian. I'm also someone, you know, for whom I've been, you know, involved in Eastern Europe my whole adult life, kind of hanging around, you know, hanging out. And so I have a lot of friends and colleagues there who I'm obviously extremely concerned about. I mean, part of what I do, or the role I found myself in, you know, is the role of the translator or the cultural mediator, you know, explaining to Americans, you know, what's happening in a part of the world that they don't know very much about. And so I'm kind of, in the language of Fundacja Pogranicze, the Borderlands Foundation in Steny and Krasna Gruda, that's a place that's very important to me. I'm the bridge. You know, at the Borderlands Foundation at Pogranicze, there's a whole philosophy of the bridge to the other, the most do drugiego. And in fact, there's even a slogan, which maybe if I say it in Polish, you'll understand it. Niech most będzie z wami. You know, may the bridge be with you. That's Krzysztof Czyżewski's phrase. And so at this moment, I feel like, you know, I'm playing the role, and my husband's playing the role, and many of our friends and colleagues are playing the role of we're the bridge. You know, like I can explain certain things to American students. You know, I can, you know, I've been taking every call from journalists, which is not something I would normally do because, you know, I'm not good at sound bites. You know, I've been speaking at rallies, again, not something I normally do. Like I'm not a political speech maker, but I feel like I can try to help people understand one another. So that's what I've been doing. Part of it is just helping people understand the present moment. You know, part of it when, you know, journalists give me more time. In fact, I think a lot of the most important work I do with journalists at this moment is not the actual interview that gets recorded or used, but the ones that actually give me half an hour off the air to just explain to them things about the history, like the layers of background that don't go into the news, but inform how people understand, you know, because I think that is something, you know, I can do. No, I edited last year a forum on historical comparisons, the uses and disadvantages of historical comparisons for life. And, you know, one thing I said in the introduction, and many people contributed to that forum, is that, of course, no two moments are ever exactly alike. But that doesn't mean that we can't understand a lot, you know, about the present through understanding certain things about the past. You know, and you know, yesterday I was giving some interviews, and one of the things that I feel like we've been a little bit slow to take in is just what it means that Putin is deranged. You know, I'm not a native Russian speaker, so you could take this with a grain of salt, but when I listened to that speech that Putin gave 10 days ago on a Monday before the invasion began, that hour-long speech, I listened with a sense of terror, you know, in part because he sounded so different to me from how he sounded, you know, giving that Crimea speech, that grandiose, majestic Crimea speech 8 years ago. His Russian was no longer so sharp, you know, from my point of view. Again, I'm not, you know, a native speaker. He no longer seemed like the grand master chess player. He no longer seemed like the shrewd strategist who had everything under control and was moving around the pieces on his chessboard, and could produce exactly the effect he wanted at will. He seemed unwell, and he seemed completely deranged. I mean, he seemed irrational. He seemed crazy. He was making less sense. He seemed less in control. I thought we're no longer in the analogy of the chess game between grandmaster chess players. I feel like now we are in the Shakespearean drama, or the Richard Wagner opera, and now my intuition, which is based on no inside knowledge, but my intuition as a historian listening to that speech was, this is an aging man facing his own mortality who has decided to destroy the whole world. I think he is capable of anything. I think the whole idea that, well, he's a very shrewd, if extremely cold and cynical player of geopolitics, but still will respond to rational negotiations. I think that's wrong. I think we are outside the realm of rationality. Again, I don't have any privileged access, and I'm not a native Russian speaker. I mean, Oksana, I'm sure you have other insights into this speech, but one thing I found journalists asking me were things like, well, could someone who is completely crazy and deluded really be playing such a major role? As a historian, I can tell you absolutely with 100% confidence, yes. Lunatics play major historical roles all the time. You should never discount the historical importance of somebody because they are a lunatic. There are just numerous examples. I'm thinking back now to 20 years ago, when I was teaching at Indiana University. I had a lot of students there who were first generation college students who came from rural areas in Indiana, in the American Midwest. And they were taking a course on 20th century Eastern Europe with me. And one lecture I gave was about Romanian fascism in the 1930s. And I was telling them the story of Cornelia Zelia Codreanu, of the Legion, of the Archangel, Michael, of the Iron Guard, of the particular kind of cult of death that this particular Romanian fascist movement in the 1930s had. And these students for whom this was completely exotic, foreign, remote, they were listening very carefully. And at the end of the lecture, this young man said to me, "Professor Shore, may I ask you a question?" And I said, "Yes, of course." And he said, "That guy you're talking to us about, Codreanu, he kind of sounds like a lunatic." And I said, yes, exactly. You're right. He was a lunatic, but you should never discount the historical role played by lunatics. And I think, to me, that's really crucial now. Like there's, the fact that I think Putin is deranged. I don't think he's responding to anything rational. There is no rational reason for Russia to be attacking Ukraine. We're outside the realm of rationality. And I think that's the first thing that the Americans and the Europeans have to recognize and just get over any kind of feeling that we might be in a chess game and the other player will will respond rationally to our next move.
Yes, I absolutely agree that he's lunatic. That's obvious. I'm just said that until recently, actually until the last days, we saw these articles with these very rational explanations, with with this scenario, like he would act rationally. And I just hope that now more and more people understand that it's not the rational game. If Volodya Yarmolenko were on my place, he would explain this kind of negotiations and this kind of politics as lose politics, not win-win, but lose-lose, and that kind of politics is appreciated by Russia. What I may add only in this situation, that the problem is not Putin alone. It's not like he is only lunatics. I'm afraid that a substantial part of Russian elites, including security and all these KGB guys around him, are as well. Maybe they are not lunatics, but at least they don't think rational. As far as I know, they are very deep into some conspiracy theories and some very strange sects. And I knew that earlier, and I'm afraid that again policymakers and intelligence in the West supposed all this time that they are dealing with some rational guys like communist elites. They were okay. They didn't believe in God. They didn't believe in the devil. They were well, kind of communists and Marxists. But this is very different. And well, you know, a lot of people here from where I sit expect a kind of new Nuremberg, yeah, a kind of international trial and some kind of big shift in international politics and in international perception of what Putinism is. When I say Putinism, I don't only mean Putin and his establishment, but the ideology at large. And as you know, this issue very well as a historian, could you project something like that? How would it be if we survive?
Marci?
Oh, yeah. Oh, historians tend to be bad at predicting the future. You know, in the best case, we can tell you what's already happened, and we have a sense of what possibly could happen, what the realm of the possible is, which seems to me at the moment to be basically anything. I mean, I think it's very clear that the entire post-war order is now over. You know, I mean, something changed. There was a tear in time, you know, 9 days ago, 8 days ago, however long it's been, when Putin attacked Ukraine. The world that existed previously is no longer the world we're in now. And there are these historical moments of kind of tears in time. I spoke on the phone, he won't mind if I tell you this, though. So almost 2 weeks ago now, on the Saturday before the invasion, Slava Vakarchuk called from Kiev. I mean, we've all been worried about him, and I should maybe remind listeners that Slava spent a semester at Yale maybe 5 or 6 years ago, so he has a lot of friends here. You know, a lot of people have spent a lot of time with him here because he was here for several months. And he called from Kiev, and I said, Slava, how does it feel in Kiev? And he said, well, Marci, imagine a kind of synthesis between how it must have felt to be in, you know, say, Miami, Florida in October 1962 during the Cuban Missile Crisis, you know, and Central Europe in the summer of 1939, you know, between the Munich Conference and the invasion of Poland. It's like, it's something like that. It's something like a fusion of those two moments. Which is actually extremely good, you know, historical analogy. And, you know, for the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, which I'm too young to have experienced, I mean, that was a moment where it seemed we were a hair's breadth from a nuclear war that would have destroyed the world. And it might have happened. You know, I remember in college studying very carefully all the micro decisions in those couple days that led up to the fact that it didn't happen. But one thing you know as a historian is that we live in a world of radical contingency. You know, there is no such thing as the end of history. There is no such thing as the iron laws of history. You know, there is, you're the Marching Cruel fellow, so I'm going to quote Marching to you. And he would have much to say if he were still alive. You know, Marching says, no, you know, there are human beings making decisions and there's chance, and that's it.
And how do you think at this moment, I know none of us can make some prospects for more than a day or 2 days. So, and it's very optimistic. It's very long-term planning. But do you see any shifts in, well, I would say, intellectual landscape in US and maybe in Europe? I don't mean the news, of course. I mean for some slow reading, you know, or maybe your academic milieu, people who think in longer terms, thinking long strategy.
I can say that I have never in my lifetime experienced, either in academia or in America or between America and Europe, the kind of unity and solidarity I felt in the past week, you know, which is remarkable. It's obviously not enough from the point of view of Ukraine, you know, who really need people to send troops. Yeah, but it's something I've never seen in my lifetime. You know, 8 years ago during the Maidan, you know, my family and I were among the people really trying to mobilize American awareness, you know, and response and assistance, and everyone's attention was somewhere else. Not so much a lack of sympathy, but, you know, everyone's attention was somewhere else, you know, and there was a non-trivial percentage of the population who was concerned that maybe this was really, you know, Ukrainian nationalist and maybe we should really be careful. And there's nothing like what I have seen now. I mean, the amount of everybody is paying attention. This never happens in America. I mean, I've been overwhelmed by how responsive my American students are. My American students, even so, I teach intellectual history, and my own work is on Eastern Europe, but a lot of the intellectual history I teach is all through Europe. So I have many students who come from all over the world who don't have any particular connection to Eastern Europe, you know, who are coming and we're reading Hegel and Husserl and Heidegger, you know, and Patočka, you know, and they have been listening with intense attention. They've been constantly inviting me and my husband and asking us to come talk to, you know, to groups in the evening. They've been sending emails, you know, and asking, is there anything we can do for your friends? Is there anything we can do for your colleagues? Is there anything we can do for Ukraine? I've never seen this kind of thing before. The fact that even the peace government, you know, in Poland, suddenly snapped out of the, you know, alternative reality they were in. Orban in Hungary snapped out of the alternative reality he was in. There's never been so much unity, you know, between the European Union and the United States that I can remember at this moment. I don't think Ukraine has ever had the attention of Washington the way it does now, where we are constantly, you know, constantly talking to people. They're constantly reaching out. I've never had journalists deluge with, is there anything we can do, anything you're getting, anybody we can talk to. I've never seen this kind of support. I've never seen this kind of unity of attention. I've gotten emails from colleagues I barely know saying, is there anything, can I do the grocery shopping for you so you can just not get off the phone with the journalist, you know? And it's very moving. I mean, it's moving, especially from my students, you know, who are asking me to you know, zoom into their residence, you know, late at night because they have questions, you know, and then they want to understand what's going on. And it also makes me think, you know, I mean, I've gotten email from a few from Russian friends who are tearing their hair out, you know, and saying, is there any way we can help? And there must be something we can do and your heart breaks when you see that there are all these good people in the world, Oksana. There are really a lot of good people. There are a lot of generous people. There are a lot of kind people. There are a lot of people, you know, full of respect for other people's lives. There are many people willing to help people they don't know. and you have like one, lunatic, sadist who is deranged, and manages to manipulate a lot of other people who aren't doing a good enough job thinking for themselves, and you've got children being blown up and people's lives being destroyed, and a hair's breadth away from the end of the world. And it seems so wrong. It's just so wrong. There are so many good people.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marci, for this comment and for this expression of solidarity. And I have a couple of questions to both of you. First of all, Oksana, if you can share what's supposed to be done immediately to preserve Ukrainian culture heritage. As a person from the cultural industry, I think that we already all agreed that this is a long-term perspective and some actions supposed to be done right now, how we can preserve Lviv as a cultural center in the city, how we can preserve Odessa, how we can protect our museums and other cultural heritage. What would you say?
We had this conversation with my colleagues at Art Arsenal in Kiev, Mistecki Arsenal. It's kind of, tragic, ironic story, because we were preparing, and I hope we are still preparing, the book arsenal, the big book fair in Kiev, and the focus theme, the focus topic of the arsenal this year is the Great Migration. With the reference to that great movements in Middle Ages.
We would never imagine this perspective. Yes.
No, actually we imagined, but we still hope that there is a slim chance that we would talk about something else, like, for example, young people migrating to Europe for better life, for better jobs, and we would talk about other people who had to migrate into Ukraine, for example. But well, that happened. So that was a private conversation about how we preserve culture, because exactly at that point we already had all these, manuals and instruction on how to pack these things, this special backpack in case of something. And so our discussion was how can we put our culture in a backpack, and run. And I'm not sure I can share everything of this discussion.
Please be careful. Yes, just tell us if there is any plan behind of that, and if we can help somehow.
Well, the most realistic, the most pragmatic thing to do is to save people, save artists, writers, those who are in need now, and those who seek for security, seek for shelter, because culture and art is people. Actually, first of all, it's people. And of course, if our cities are suffering, so of course the cultural heritage is suffering as well. You cannot evacuate, Sophia Cathedral from Kiev. You cannot you cannot save Lviv or other cities unless the bombs and the rockets stop shooting at us.
Just heartbreaking what you're saying right now, Oksana, but just being practical and pragmatic on these issues, probably we should refocus a bit our calls, showing those beautiful places, buildings, churches, museums, and all the cultural heritage of Ukraine, just showing what we are going to protect, what we are calling to protect, right?
There is a way which is very very complicated, and I know there is a lot of discussion, and I know it's hard to accept. But from where we sit, the best solution is no-fly zone. So
That's right. Yeah,
that's
thank
what
you.
we ask for: protect the sky.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Marci, we have a question lot. It's very, maybe a bit tricky question, but it's important to understand the context. We got now that for American intellectuals and journalists, Ukraine is really the topic number one for now. But what fears Americans have in the context of this war, which may prevent America or the world from increasing sanctions and reactions, and how it can influence the freedom of expression landscape?
Well, first of all, I haven't encountered any threats to freedom of expression. I mean, I've spoken very freely to everybody, including live, and there hasn't, I don't have any kind of feeling that anything is being censored. And I'm not the best person, to comment on what's going on in Washington, because it's a degree removed. But my sense is that the fear is of nuclear war. The reason not to do something more dramatic, is because Putin could destroy the world. So in some sense, the reason to do something more dramatic is the same as the reason not to do something more dramatic, right? Because the fear is, he is a crazy dictator, who is in possession of enough nuclear weapons to destroy the world. And so the fear of provoking him, into doing so is significant. Of course, there's also the fear that if he's not stopped immediately, he's going to do that. Fiona Hill, whom you probably know, one of our top Russia experts who testified at the impeachment trial, the first impeachment trial of Donald Trump in connection with his phone call with Zelensky, gave an interview recently where people were asking, well, he wouldn't really do that, and she said, yes, he would. You're not dealing with somebody who has any sense of restraint.
I guess that's too late to ask ourselves if he would or not, right? We are on the track, sadly, and now each hour counts. So here is really important to take the action on the field. Youth can do something. So join and stand with Ukraine, and remember that our main values is freedom of expression. So we are trying to provide the proper platform to hear all the options and all the prognosis. Marci Shore joined us today from Connecticut, and Oksana Forostyna from Lviv, the cultural capital of Ukraine. And for now, I will invite to the stage Salil Tripathi. Are you with us? The US-based writer, journalist, human rights activist who writes on politics, economics, literature, and social trends, PEN International board member and ex-WIPC Writers in Prison Committee chair. For closing remarks and further announcement. Salil? While Salil facing the technical issues, maybe Oksana, some final call to our viewers all around the world.
Well, first of all, I would like to say thank you, Marci, for for stressing this. These are the challenges we're facing. We're dealing with a lunatic, and we're dealing with lunatics who surround him. So I think that the world should actually consider maybe not the no-fly zone if it's not possible, but something like that, and involve because actually at this moment maybe it's less risky to push than not to push. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Oksana. Thank you for sharing your experience as well. And we really hope that your colleagues are safe, and all the best to Volodymyr, who's trying to get his family to the safer place. And Salil, please, stage is yours for closing remarks and further announcement.
Thank you. And I mean, I feel like an interloper here speaking after two experts on such an important issue. I have made only one trip to Ukraine. This was in Lviv. This was for the PEN Congress a few years ago, and I learned a lot. I still can't forget the large banners that were put up by PEN Ukraine all over saying 2 + 2 = 4. And I would ask people like Olha and Tatiana and Mikola and everybody that why are you stating the obvious? And the rational response to that was that it became necessary to state the obvious when the truth was facing such relentless attacks in the form of propaganda. And I think that is one of the key issues we need to bear in mind. And for us also at PEN International, it's an important issue to think about and reflect on about what does one do when one is committed to free expression, but when one side has such access to the megaphones on one hand, and on the other hand, it has the ability to say what it wants and distort narratives, because that ultimately is the aim of leaders who are ruthless and determined, whether they are genuinely insane and lunatic or whether it is a pretense put on in order to present a particular point of view. I agree with you, Marci, you know, when you said that prediction about is hard, and particularly about the future. And I don't mean it in a facetious sense. And I can also understand this great desire to do something. You know, you go on social media or anywhere and there are ads saying, do your bit for Ukraine. The wrong way forward, in my personal opinion, is what the British Minister Nadine Dorries suggested today, which is to call for a cultural boycott of the Russian Federation, because it shows a politician's desire to be relevant, but it does not really help. The mayor of Florence had a request to remove a statue to Fyodor Dostoevsky, which, you know, is almost ironical because it would mean that Putin's crime and the punishment is to be faced by Dostoevsky, which is, you know, turns the whole crime and punishment upside down altogether. So I take a lot of solace and faith and hope from the amazing statement Russian authors and writers and academics have put out. I mean, PEN Moscow certainly did that, saying that, you know, the war is wrong. I also take a lot of inspiration from what Navalny said in a series of tweets yesterday, where he was basically saying that on a particular day at 2 in the afternoon, come out and protest. I get inspired when I see the people at St. Petersburg coming out and saying no to war. I also get very enthusiastic when I see anti-war socialists in Russia trying to challenge this. And I mean, there's almost something Gandhian about some of these approaches. And so, I mean, coming from India as I do, my immediate response is that we need to strengthen those voices. And as an organization committed to free speech, we have to make sure that that dialogue continues and that kind of a conversation happens. And of course, as Oksana says, we need to preserve culture, which is how it comes through. And of course, as Marci, you say, we need to learn from the history. And I would very warmly endorse, Marci, your own book, you know, Ukrainian Night, which came out a few years ago. And I read this wonderful essay you wrote in the Wall Street Journal over the weekend, which really gives a succinct account of why we are where we are. And Oksana, your own love letter to Kiev, you know, which came out, I think 6-7 years ago, maybe. I think I saw it in Kritika. I think it's something I would also very warmly ask people to look at. I would also ask people to look at David Patriarkarakos' book, War in 140 Characters, which actually tells us what social media can do when it crafts narratives around conflict. I would also read Anne Applebaum again and, you know, Red Famine, about why is it that people feel the way they do about the current conflict. And, you know, black humor and surrealism always helps. I would go to Andrei Kurko and his fiction at that time. So I just want to say that there are a lot of sound, sane voices in the two countries, even if it may be ruled in this particular case by a completely irrational leader in the case of Putin. We must challenge that. We must strengthen the voices of peace, and we must strengthen freedom of expression. Thank you both so much. I learned a lot, and I look forward to continuing the dialogue with you. Ola?
Yes, thank you so much, Salil, for those closing remarks. And I would like to thank you, Oksana, and thank you, Marci, for this, let's say, historical introduction from the other side of the world, but we are all in this together. I want to remind that this war is also informational war. So our responsibility is to share proven sources, is to understand what we are listening and what we are spreading, how we are spreading the word. And our dialogues on war continues. And in 2 days, on Saturday, we will have next episode welcoming Sophie, Oksana, and Victoria. Oh my goodness, just forgive me, my memory. Yeah, we will announce the further episodes on our both webpage. So please follow our webpage, spread the word, and stand with Ukraine. Thank you so much. Thank you for our conversation today, and thank you, Salil, for important closing remarks, which I believe will open very important conversation on the issues of culture, heritage, culture boycott, and how we should deal with it, because this is a long perspective. Thank you.
Thanks.